Hello everyone. Welcome to the YouTube Mall Builders Thursday Night General Hangout. Thursday's hangouts are for the general discussion on mall railroading that we all can set a topic to discuss for the night. Thursday's hangouts are the proud sponsor of the Tuesday night presentations, the YouTube Mall Builders, EMAG, and the YouTube Mall Builders live show. I want to say thanks for everybody joining in tonight's show. And here's your host for the night, Johnny Reb of Southeast Rails. Well, hello everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Well, let's see who all we got on the panel for the show tonight. Got Mr. Ralph. Got Newcastle. Got Ken. Uh-oh. We got Mr. Dude here tonight.
Hey, dude.
We got Andy and Andrew in Australia. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing awesome. How are you guys?
Very good. Hey, we can hear you tonight.
Yeah, I'm on my computer now.
Oh, are you? So how's life going?
Good. I got a new love life.
Uh-oh.
Those are really expensive, brother. If you get one.
No, this one here is going to be about 50-50. I think it's going to be good.
A good job, just to say.
And yes, my train room is still up. It has not been taken down.
I'd be rather disappointed if you tore it out, so. You never know. Life will make more time eventually.
This thing sure has changed. I see that it didn't stay original. It went back to that new system, huh?
Yeah.
Go ahead and do your thing, Johnny.
Well, they're telling me that the right side of the screen's getting cut off, Andy. Alright, somebody let me know what the volume's like. I turned the volume down on the panel because I'm having mic issues, but we're kind of thinking it's Windows 10 because I got that installed on this new computer. So you'll have to turn your volume up, so hopefully they'll bring my volume up too where y'all will be able to hear it. Somebody could let me know about that too, please. I'd appreciate it.
Looking into it, too.
But alright, we're going to lead off with Mr. Ken over here. You got your mic going, Ken? I guess he can't hear me. Oh, okay. That's good. So hopefully my volume is the same as everybody in the Hangout then. If I can get somebody to talk.
I can hear you just fine, Johnny.
Has anybody been following the train wreck in New Jersey?
No.
Yeah, the YouTube audio seems to be okay. The video seems to be cut down the middle, and it's letterboxing sub. So, not sure what's happening on your screen over there, but.
Well, I mean, I got the Hangouts on the big screen. I got OBS here on the second monitor, and it's fine. I see both screens.
You're doing screen share application.
Oh, it is. Let's get back here to I got display capture. Let me,
Should be fine.
Alright, I just changed over to full screen, so
Give it a second to update.
see if that made any difference. Yeah, I can see where it's cutting it off now.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's still cutting just part of it off, so it seems to be. See, I think your canvas size is wrong for what you're outputting. So in your stream output settings, there's a resolution you need to be putting out. 720 by 1280.
Oh, okay, that's going to be over here in the settings.
Yeah, there's in an output setting. Let me get my OBS up so I can see exactly where that is.
Alright, let's see. Output mode is grayed out.
Yeah, you can't change that while we have a live stream. You can't.
Oh.
I'm looking at that setting right now. You can't, while you're streaming or recording, you can't change the output. But do you see the rescale output on the output under streaming? You see rescale output?
Yeah, mine's 1024 by 819.
That's your problem. You need to set that to like, I've been using, there's multiple, but you can scale to, there's a lot of choices there. I like 1280 by 720 because that's kind of the native resolution of 720p HD, which is, if you could change that, you may be able to change that live. I don't know.
No, it won't let me. It's all grayed out.
I was afraid it wouldn't. Well, you have to set the checkbox there just to stop it from being grayed out. The rescale output checkbox.
I don't have a checkbox.
Oh, click on output mode, click advanced.
Yeah, another tip I found, if you're going to stream live and you're going to record, put them both at the same resolution.
Yeah, which we don't do recording in OBS. We could, but we don't. And they're saying you're a touch louder than everybody else, Johnny, so you could probably bring us up just a touch.
Alright, let me get out of here so they'll let me do that.
No, you can get to that in a minute, whatever.
Alright, let's go back over here and see if he'll... No, it's still grayed. It's not going to let me do it.
I didn't think you could when you have a live stream. I was afraid of that. Looked okay the other night when we tested this, so I don't...
Yeah. Alright. I just brought y'all's volume up a little bit more.
Well, as long as anybody that's showing anything, make sure they have it on the left side of the screen. We're probably okay.
How much of the right screens?
15 or 20%. So
yeah, because the only ones I see is your icon and Andrew's.
Yeah, so it seems like it's cut off maybe 25%. So as long as people, if they're showing anything, hold it to the left. As long as audio's okay, probably all right.
Yeah. Let me get back over here so I can see what the chat's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, they just been talking about audio and blaming it all on me, apparently. I think Phil is, which is fine. I'm good with that.
Alright, well, I just turned the everybody in the Hangout, I turned their volume up a little bit, so Tony's over there getting his windows blown out now because he had turned his volume up on 97.
Yeah, I think you'll get used to this setup. Once you find a group of settings that actually works, leave them there. Don't play around with them.
Yeah. Well, see, last week nobody could hardly hear me. But it seems like that's working now. I'm cutting right the screen off.
There's no doubt this way of doing things is more complicated. Of course, I think it's worth it in the long run, but that's in the long run.
Yeah.
Takes a while to get there.
Oh, we'll get there. Well, I noticed a post about 2 weeks ago from Tom's Trains and Things. Is that right, Andy?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He was showing what he does to keep from losing tools. Anybody got any way that what they do to keep from losing their tools? He had a little handy trick for the NMRA gauge where he took, it's got that hole up there about the center of the plate. He put a piece of all thread rod through there with a wing nut, put a nut down and put the gauge on, and used the wing nut to lock it in. But the other end, he bent it to 90 degrees, put a wing nut on that, so if he needed to adjust it to straighten the gauge up, he could.
Miles had a pretty good trick for that NMRA gauge too. He ties a ribbon through his, like a bright piece of red ribbon, so he can find it at the bottom of his toolbox.
Yeah.
That worked pretty well. I've bought every contraption in the world for paintbrushes and this and that, and toolboxes and everything, and none of it seemed to work so far. So
I thought that rod was pretty good because that way you could actually be hands free, have it sitting there on the track or whatever if you're checking clearances.
It's interesting you brought that up there, Johnny, because today I've been trying to set up my new workbench, and just so happens I'm building this new one of the tools holder, and it's out of a 2x4. And I just drilled some holes, set them, it can be set up for number 11, X-Acto knives, for screwdrivers. I even had it set up where I can have a chisel, and so the chisel can go in there. So,
yeah,
being able to find tools is always an issue for me. So I'm trying to make it to where all my tools will be on the pegboard instead of in a drawer.
that's really good for painting.
All right.
Yeah, I made one for my paint sets.
Now that you built that there, Ken.
Yeah.
I got a question for you. If you go putting a bunch of knives in that, you got some paintbrushes, whatever you reach across, you're going to cut yourself up.
I know, I was afraid of that too. I said I was going to say I would get myself in the bottom of the arm with it.
Well, actually, the way I'm now setting it up is most of my scenery, painting, and all is on my left, and my other tools are on my right. So I'm trying to keep it to where the sharp objects are pretty much out of my way on the left. And worst come to worst, you can take and turn the blade down on this thing. It doesn't have to be straight up.
Yeah.
You can put it down in the tool, and it's easy to grab it out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, your chisel, what you'll have to do is mill a slot in there that you can stick the blade in, which isn't a real problem.
Yeah, you can do that. Just so happens the chisel, it's been used for a little bit of everything, even done some bondoing with it. So worst come to worst, you can do a slot or, in some other one, worst come to worst like that.
Yeah.
It's an all purpose. Matter of fact, as you're speaking of that, I have this, which is definitely handy for like my 10X glues, and this one is for a slow setting glue and your ACs or whatever you want there. So that kind of helps from knocking it over.
Yeah.
I even got some denatured alcohol here in an old 10X bottle, and even added a couple of places for the brushes that I use just for that, so they don't get mixed up with my other paint brushes.
Yeah, Ken, what you can do, the one with your X-Acto knives, I've done the same thing, but I've got 5 or 6 different types of blades. What I did, I glued a bit of cork to the bottom of the hole.
So it doesn't damage the blade.
So it doesn't damage the blade. You can actually push it into the cork, and it actually holds there a bit better too.
One of the
felt or something like that, just so you don't have such a blunt point down in there.
One of the things you can do to that 2x4 that you got the holes in with the chisel in it now is take another piece of 2x4 the same length and stand it up on end and drill down into the top of that.
Right.
And just go a little bit further, so you've got the bare metal part into the wood, and only the handle is showing out.
Right, right.
Put all your knives in there.
Sure. It was kind of a quickie thing, you know, just it could be an all-purpose. It doesn't have to be exactly for X-Acto knives.
Like I do the same thing with my MIG ammo stuff that I use. I in the midst of the last night of doing a model for a contest when I went to Massachusetts, the last thing I did, I was putting some of this stain on, and I knocked the bottle over. It was all over my computer keyboard. It was all over my track pants. I got it onto the model I was working on, but thankfully I was able to get it off. I have carpet tile on the floor of my layout room, so I managed to lift that. But since then, I now have this wooden thing that keeps the bottles upright.
Yeah, I made mine like a styrofoam. I just took a piece of white bead styrofoam, not the bead styrofoam, but the white that's kind of like the florist styrofoam. I have some for making trees.
Or the blue or pink.
Yeah, I got one board I use for when I'm gluing very small parts. It's got a strip of cork down, thick cork down the back edge where I got all my needles. You know, the big bagging needles and small needles. And I've also got a tray full of little balls of I don't know what you call it in the States. We call blue tack here.
Yeah.
And it's got I'm glued to it. I've got a sheet of glass. I put a bit of blue tack down, stick whatever small piece I'm going to work on that, and I can paint it. And then I can also, with a pair of tweezers, get an even smaller bit and hold it there while I glue it, and use a needle to hold it in place while it goes off. They're handy. Little things like that make life easy for you.
Yep.
Some people go to the trouble of getting third hands and things like that. I found blue tack, and the blue tack doesn't leave a resin or anything on the model either.
Yeah, I use a lot of that in soldering, or I use this white putty stuff. It's kind of like a paste you'd use for sticking posters on block walls or something. And I use that, and I pack it around my solder joints, hold my wires in place, get everything perfect. And then it also absorbs some of the heat of the solder, especially when you're doing, delicate track work.
Yeah, that's what we call blue tack here.
Yep, same stuff, but I use it a lot for soldering.
But if you want something to absorb the heat, take a pair of self-closing tweezers like that.
Yeah.
And clamp it on either side of your soldering joint, and they act as a heat sink.
Yep, I use hemostats a lot for the same, which does the same thing. It's just a heat, just sucks the heat off from it. And I use hemostats a lot in my track laying because I spike with hemostats and such.
Yep.
So.
I guess that really didn't answer your question about what to do, but I always say that it's all great minds think alike. I created this piece of wood, and I put a track gauge at both ends so I can test the height of the couplers, and then even kept a pick where the pick can go on the end. Excuse me, there we go. And then I drilled a hole, and I can keep it on the pegboard under my workbench because the pegboard actually goes below the workbench. So this thing can just disappear, pegged right off on the pegboard. That really works. Now, I have some dual gauge on this, so this thing's mostly set up for doing testing standard gauge equipment, but of course I can take my narrow gauge. Again, if you can make sure I keep it in all my gauging drawer, and that's one thing is organizing to where where everything is at, and that's something I'm trying to do is perform better, storing your tools and knowing where they're at, so you don't have to worry about where is that tool I left, or is it in my toolbox where I go to train shows. Just being able to better organize to where where your tools are, because that's always been an option with me, where I'll like, daggone, I just found something, it was months ago or months later, and that's just aggravating to me. So making sure your tools are in good, a good place where you can find them if you have a toolbox that's organized or a workbench, and I definitely would encourage if somebody's modeling, they have a workbench where they can find it. No matter if it's just a desk, but having it where you can find your tools and keeping them one place, that's very important.
Boy, it sure makes your model. If you have limited modeling time like I do, it sure makes your time more effective. Now, I'm saying that because I believe in it, but not that I practice it.
I agree there.
I try. I even buy all these little organizers. I buy these little baskets. Dollar store or something. They're a couple bucks for a kind of a group of baskets, and I have different baskets. And recently, I put a bunch. I've kind of got an idea I'm working with now where I always have, like every other modeler, I've got 15 cakes in the oven, so to speak. And I've got all these various projects at different levels of completion depending on what I want to work on. And so I found these boxes that some phones come in were the perfect size for most of the structures, even decent size structures at HO scale. And I'm going to put each kit in a box with the parts I have yet to assemble on it. That also lets me, sometimes when I travel, I work away from home, I can just grab one of those kits and I've got a little plastic tote that I put, kind of common tools in, picks and knives and sandpaper and stuff.
Yeah,
So I've got
I
two
agree
boxes
there.
and I can go modeling somewhere. So
I agree there, Andy. I've actually started creating what I call as project boxes. And since
yeah, that's
I'm
what I'm calling it too.
modeling modules, I will have, it's not yet, but will have boxes that are labeled for each module. Actually, each module has a name on them. So we created names so we know again, at train shows, we have modules, so if we were switching, we know where certain equipment is, or if we were switching and it had a switch list and certain equipment was going to a certain location. Most of all our modules do have names or some kind of identification. So with that being said, I now are creating boxes with projects. Either I purchased them or they're in the process or I'm waiting for certain items. And so with them being in the box, a plastic box, like you say, then you know that I don't have to go searching or say, oh, I lost it or whatever. So that is a part of my organization, and that's part of my hobby too.
You
Andy?
name the modules like town names or something?
We have, but sometimes in a humorous way, we've named them like I got two hill modules. Ones I've switched, and we've called a lot of modules like pair names, pairing up like Bonnie and Clyde. I know it's a humorous part of the hobby. And I have what I call them the drug modules, the upper and downer. And so a lot of our modules that are identical with each other, we try to pair them up and carry them with each other. So yes, we try to take some half-inch vinyl lettering and put the lettering and also even a build date, if nothing but the last two digits of the year they were created.
Sure.
And on some of the smaller modules, the mini modules, we even put a large, either inch and a half to 2 inch letter, like the letter F, like the locomotive, like an F unit, and had put to designate that this is the front and the end that you'd have to hook the next module to. So yeah, that's another part of, if you would say, organization of the hobby.
Well, especially for modular clubs, because they have a unique set of organizational issues.
And especially our particular system, because you can't turn a module around. We're not Fremo, so we're pretty much you're stuck one way and one way only.
I got to interrupt here for a second. Andy,
Sir.
can you give them an explanation of the buffering? Because the YouTube channel is buffering.
Yeah, it is for me too. I think it's happening for everybody.
Yeah. That's something on their end. That's not on my end.
It could be anywhere in the equation. Could be Google's busy. Could be a lot of things.
I checked OBS and My frame drop is only 2%, so
Yeah, it's not horribly bad.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variability in that. I mean, it could be on all of you watching, could be, your internet connection being swapped. You should possibly be able to turn the quality down a little bit. Um,
Where'd I do that at?
you can't. They have to turn the quality they're watching down. And you could turn
Oh,
the quality you're syndicating or streaming out to, but there's a little gear in the bottom right hand corner, and where it says quality, and you could set that quality down to say 480. It's set at 720 by default, or it's set to auto. And if you have the internet, it'll try to stay up to 720p. But you can turn that down to 480 or 360, and that will buffer less.
where is that at? Is that on the YouTube channel?
Yeah, that's for the guy. Everybody who's watching, they turn the quality down.
Oh, so I can't do that here.
No, no, no. That's for the people watching. You're dishing it out to YouTube servers, and anybody who's watching has some control over how much bandwidth they consume, bringing a certain quality down. And Google will downscale it and send it to them. So in the gear, everybody who's watching, in the bottom right hand corner, among a few other buttons down there, there's a full screen button, etc. There's a little gear, and you can set your quality down, from something to something lower than 720, and that may help you stream better. And there's a lot of variables in that. Johnny's quality of video going up, the quality of video that Google servers can keep up with right now, your internet connection. There's a lot of variables, but turning the quality down puts less load on your side of the equation.
Yeah.
And as long as Johnny stays under about 5% frame loss, we shouldn't have a lot of buffer from the upload part of the equation.
All right, so hopefully they'll help everybody understand what's kind of going on here.
Dave, you know how dangerous that is riding down the road talking? I do it all the time, but what's up, buddy?
He's going to get a ticket.
Yeah. Ralph,
Yes, sir.
you mind talking about your little project there a little bit? Because not too many people are doing something like that.
Oh, well, as I described once before, I don't take challenges lightly, and somebody challenged me because I do a lot of weathering to weather a Volkswagen bus, or to weather something, make it look like it's really old. So I did a junkyard thing with the Volkswagen Slumber bus, the 23 window bus, and the challenge came back at me. They said, "What the hell are you going to do now to beat that?" So I'm working on this one here. Turn it around.
Yeah.
Boy.
I end up being beyond Mad Max, into the future sort of thing, post-apocalyptic, and it's going to be a hover van. It's going to be floating, and I managed to get it to float on some magnets. So now it's just finishing it off.
That's fascinating. That floating business is just all over my sci-fi geekdom, man. That's just...
Well, that's sort of what got. Otherwise, I wouldn't have accepted the challenge. I mean, it was so far out in left field. I figured, okay,
Yeah.
I can do this. I think.
Yeah.
I played around. It took me about a month to get the magnets to work, and I'm doing fine so far. So now I'm just pushing off the model itself. It's in G scale.
Yeah. Some company brought out a model of the DeLorean that could float, levitate.
Yeah, I seen that one too, and I'm fascinated with the DeLoreans anyway. So.
Yeah, but 95% of the people that bought it can't get them to levitate, even with the special jig they give you to line everything up.
They call it magnetic levitation, and you can buy some devices. I played around with electromagnets and rare earth magnets, and I managed to get the thing working. Now my challenge is to get it to stop spinning. It wants to spin, even very slowly, but it still wants to spin. So I've been working on the base. And that's going to be the charging station, which goes right here, like so. So I figured the only way I can stop it from spinning is to somehow tether it. So from the charging station to the van, I have some magnet wire that I'm going to connect.
Yeah, put enough pressure on it to keep it from.
Sorry.
Yeah. I just think, what about putting a parking meter out there and have a magnet on it and a small magnet on the front of the van and let that hold it in place?
I kind of thought of that, but then when I tried to put additional magnets, it threw it right out of whack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Magnetic forces, you get a lot of circular forces in a lot of direction. It gets really complicated really quickly. It's just like calculate the speed of the Earth and the Moon. That's pretty easy. The Earth and the Moon and the Sun, that's not too bad. Now, when you put 8 planets and moons and all this stuff in there, it's really hard to calculate all that movement. There's so many variables that a human can't do the calculations.
Yeah.
Hence their need for him to invent. He invented calculus just to figure that math out. He had to invent a math system for it.
For those that haven't seen it, there's what it looks like hovering.
That's so cool.
It is.
Completely.
So it's kind of a cross between, well, I guess you'd call it's a post-apocalyptic, pseudo steampunk.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, there is a kit you can buy for the Star Wars speeder and the Stormtroopers that levitates.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, I've got to ask, Troy, what are you doing?
That's my boat.
Doggone it. Haven't you seen what this did to dude?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
my
his
boat.
boat. Yeah.
Well, you gonna put a layout inside it?
No,
Yeah.
the boat is 20 years old. The floorboards were completely rotted out, so I went to go and start redoing the floor, and all the foam has soaked up all the water. So I'm actually in the process of taking and cutting out all the foam that's down inside the floor. It's all got to be replaced. I got everything coming now for it, so got the carpet for it. It's a nice gray carpet. I don't know if you guys can see that down there.
I know you needed another project, buddy, just like I do, but still looks cool.
You can't tear me away from my fishing, though. That's the thing.
Alright, I just couldn't figure out what it was. I kept looking at there. I just had to ask real quick, but we'll have to get it back in the trains again.
Yeah, the layout's been put up on hold here for a
I had
while.
nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you did. Because
Yeah,
I've
you
been
can't
bugging
interrupt
my
the
grandpa
fishing
for the
season.
last 4 or 5 years now about getting his boat because he never uses it. And the trim and tilt stopped working on there, and the motor wasn't coming up at all. And so he was going to take it into the shop and have it fixed at the shop. Well, I was heading up there to the cabin anyhow to go and do some fishing, and I did some digging on it and got the trim and tilt to work. I told him, I says, so you don't have to take it to the shop. I says, I'll take this boat off your hands. You don't have to worry about it. And he turns around, he comes up there right after I got the trim and tilt working. And he says, I've been thinking about what you said. I says, oh, you mean about the trim and tilt? I got that fixed. He says, well, that's good. He says, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. He says, you know what? Congratulations. You're a proud owner of a new boat.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited about it. It's 16.9, It's an old Alumacraft. It's a 95, but I mean, it's been outside almost its whole life.
Have you already started rebuilding it, Troy?
Yeah, I gutted it right out.
Oh man, you're right on it then, aren't you?
All right,
Yeah.
we've got a couple of comments here, and I'll go ahead and hit on them. They're too good to pass up.
Uh-oh.
Professor, how you doing tonight? Now that brings up a whole new take on modeling rail marine operations.
Hey, that'd be pretty cool.
Well, it's
Hey.
kind of meta, like he says. A car ferry, or actually, AJ Kleepas says, can't wait to see a car ferry. So you model a car ferry, a float operation on a boat. It's pretty meta to be a float model on a float.
That would be a die-hard modeler.
You'd have to be.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Shane, what are you working on tonight?
I'm somewhere between a pair of projects right now. I just got 1,200 Z-scale people from China today.
Ah,
Painted or unpainted?
Do what?
Painted or unpainted?
They're painted, but a lot of them are the same color. I mean, it's a pretty generic. I don't know. It's a pretty generic batch of yellows and oranges and greens. So I'm gonna end up taking some of them and dunking the legs in tan and blue to make khakis and jeans and whatnot. And I'll give it a little bit of more variation between the people. But they're all gonna go in my my Superliner cars as I slowly get the interiors of them painted. And then I've got a B&O HO locomotive, but I won't talk too much on that.
Oh, we're not going to give you too hard a time for a little HO scale. Everybody flirts with it.
Oh, I know. I've got that MRL unit working. Okay, I'll talk about it. You win. This is actually a big bill project. I guess he was doing car cards the other day and came up engine light, cars heavy on his layout. So he's slowly trying to get more locomotives onto his layout, and he sent this to me, and it's hooked up with an ESU version 4 and a pair of the new Sugar Cube speakers that have the double deep baffle on them, which is normally, in comparison, that big. And the new baffles are twice as deep, and they're just wicked loud. There it is.
You have to mill anything out of the weights to get that to get the Sugar Cube in?
Not on this one. This is an old Athearn Blue Box, and I was able to. Both of the speakers are glued right up over the top of the flywheel, and most of the time, a lot of people mount them long ways up and down, and I mounted mine long ways back to front this time around, with the thickest part going from side to side, so it just sits inside the shell, and then glued everything to the top. Put the decoder in the middle at the highest point in that motor, then both the Sugar Cubes over the flywheels, and everything else is kind of ran up over in the end spaces.
Sure.
And I didn't have to do any modification from there.
Just to help you for next time, you can take the motor out, remove the mounts, and reset the motor in silicone bathtub sealer.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually set it lower than it was original.
Yeah, this one actually came to me. The motor was actually free, and the mounts didn't come with it. The previous owner had tried to wood glue the motor to the frame, and that wood glue had sheared away. So it's pretty much done with the same thing. I've got a real thick. It kind of acts like hot glue, but it sits a little, or it's got a little bit more playtime to it. It's just a real thick kind of glue. I just secured that motor down to the frame, and like you said, it sits lower in that frame than normal, but still runs. I mean, just silk smooth.
So that's still using a stock, and I guess it is with the flywheel. It's still using a stock motor versus a K-edit.
Yeah, no, everything on this model is stock besides, of course, the decoder and speakers.
They've got kind of a bad reputation, but with the right work, you could make I had a lot of those that they ran. back in the day, they run pretty good. You go compare them to a Kato or something. No, they don't have the slow speed performance, but
No, well, say the ESUs, they've got a CV, and I was actually just reading about this yesterday. I believe it is CV54, which is automatic back EM, or it's automatic back EMF, and when you set 54 to 0 and then press 1 on your throttle, it will run for about 3 or 4 foot and then stop, and then the bell will come on, and when you turn the bell off, it pretty much syncs up your back EMF. This model is wicked. I mean, this is probably older than me, and even in a crawl, let me see if I can get this to come up without turning on.
so it's calibrating back EMF. Either you or someone else posted about that CV54 the other day, because I was just reading about that a couple days ago myself.
That was
Yeah, I know ESU posted a video on it.
Okay, that's where it was. I knew I'd seen that somewhere recently, and it kind of got my attention too.
was on Train Masters too.
Yeah, that's where it was. Yeah.
Yeah, ESU had just posted a from the workbench tip video on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing to remember is that we had those Ather Blue boxes that didn't run so great, etc., but we didn't have the electronics to support it. I mean, the motors were not necessarily horrible. They last forever, but the electronics, the motor control, the back EMF, etc., are, that's kind of a game changer.
When you say it's an old blue box, what does the motor look like? Is it open frame or does it have a metal casing on it?
It's kind of a bathtub frame in the bottom. The motor sits into it, but after that, everything else on top is open.
No, but I mean the motor itself,
Oh,
because that'll actually say how old it is.
Yeah, they originally the mechanism is kind of electronic. The coils, I guess, and stuff are open. The later ones were inside of a like an aluminum or zinc casing.
Like a tin can.
Yep, like a tin can. Yep, kind of like a can motor, but they're like you can't call it square. They're kind of octagonal, or they're square on the sides with rounded tops and bottoms.
But the newer ones give you a slower speed, whereas the old ones don't.
yeah, it's one of the older ones.
The older ones are not 5-pole motors.
And Ather, there's a kid out there, and I'm pretty sure it's Ather that actually made it, that has all the mounting arrangements and such to just directly swap out, quick and easy, swap out the old open motors for a can motor. And it's a pretty easy kit. I was thinking it was Ather themselves that made it, but somebody made it.
Well, while there's a break, real quick. Hey, Shane,
Yes.
have you got my email?
I don't believe so. I have not seen anything from anybody but local guys.
You got something to write down on. It's real simple. It's southeastrails@gmail.com.
Okay, then I can just pull that offline later then.
Yeah, you drop me a line, please.
Yes, sir, I can do that. I'll make a note of it.
I got a couple of questions for you.
No worry. If I can find my damn post-it notes, I'll make a note of it here. Here they are. Okay, I'll make a note of it. And I'll in a minute here when I get done working on this, I'll shoot you an email.
All right, appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
I want to know how you got the host with Lionel.
Okay, so this is actually a really funny story, and at some point, him and I will talk about it. They kind of talked about it last time I was on. Him and I actually got into a fight. Was the first time we met. When he posted the James Wright episode, he had used one of my buddies here in town, Jason, Railfan Jason. He posts on here. He had used one of his pictures, thinking it was one of James's pictures, and I could tell because the unit that's in it is one of the units that I put dashboard lights in and did one of his sound installs on. So I emailed Lionel and said, "Hey, you used so and so's picture, and it's not James. Just a heads up. I let the guy know if you don't mind taking it down." And after that, I won't get into detail, but because I know at some point we'll end up talking about it, but him and I exchanged less than civil emails for about 4 or 5 turns. And then I finally came back and said, I'll apologize. I didn't mean to say any of that. It's just he's had his stuff taken before, and we try to watch out for each other's stuff being taken. And, I get if it's an accident, no big deal. And he apologized, and we got to talking, and then I told him I had a YouTube page, and then he checked out my YouTube page and then had me on way back in, what was it, March or April or whatever it was for my interview. And then because Larry and I are technically DCC guys, and he remembers nothing from writing his pamphlet, he, at least for the viewer mail, asked me to come back on. And then we're talking about it, doing a couple other little things here.
Okay.
Why do you ask?
Well, no, I'm just curious.
Oh.
They were interesting episodes to listen to, though, so you did a good job on them.
Yep, it was good.
On one of the episodes, he did explain that whole story. I don't remember which one.
I can't remember if I don't think it might have been my interview episode. 55, I believe it was. I don't remember if it was that one or if I don't believe it was Viewer Mail 44. I think it was my interview episode that he started with. But yeah, at some point, him and I were talking about it, and at some point we will actually sit down and go through the emails and laugh about it. But I do appreciate it, though.
And it's funny you mention that, because on my Facebook weathering page, I put some reference photos up for someone from Portugal that I was communicating with, trying to explain to him how to do the weathering.
Uh-huh.
When I put the photographs up, I never claimed them to be mine, and I got them from a forum board that I used to be a member of, which has since gone tits up. Some guy comes on and said, those pictures belong to a buddy of mine. I said, they very well might be. And I said, if he was a member, then I know who it is. And I came back with a name, and I said, I'm not claiming that they're mine. I never heard back from him.
Huh.
And I said, they're reference photos only.
Yeah, so we had an incident like that the other day in one of the groups over on Facebook. Some guy had screenshot one of my friend's video, and a couple NS units took a yellow paint can to the roof, and it was just, down one unit and then across the next unit, and it was ugly. And somebody had screenshot it and then shared it. And, the whole thing just lit up in an argument. A bunch of people were like, well, he can do that. And we were like, well, then why didn't he just share the video instead of stealing the photo? Oh, it was bad.
There's no simple answers. Anybody who pays attention to modern media, social media, there's no simple answers to what is fair use. So we just don't know. And it depends. But my opinion is, especially in a hobby like ours, this is different when you're talking about the movie industry and stuff, but in a hobby like ours, why not share accreditation or share credit? Why not say that so-and-so did it? I would, just out of habit, just out of respect.
Right. My thing about it was, it would be different if he had shared, the link to that video and said, go to X point in that video and you'll see it. But the fact that he screenshotted the parts of the video and then shared them, that's kind of what, because for me, there's no return for me at that point. Great, you shared my stuff, but I don't get the view out of that. I don't get anything back from that. And that's the reason I put that video up. That's kind of the thing that set me over on that. Now, I'm all for sharing. That's the reason I've got my YouTube channel, and I'm all for sharing. But don't screenshot parts of my video and then share it. Just share the video as it is and tell them what part to go to. And the nice thing about it is, if they want to, they can leave me feedback right then and there, and they're not trying to find, who's the owner of this and whatnot. It's all right there.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Why not do it right? And especially this hobby, again, if we're talking about, the movie industry, that's I have different opinions about that. But in our hobby, a little bit of mutual respect, and if you have admiration for or disdain for someone's work, point somebody at it.
Right.
Same thing here on this channel. If I was going to show anything here, I would want to, and I often do, say this guy's doing great work or whatever, and here's I'm always pointing people at other people's work.
Right. That's my thing. Is I'm not against sharing. I'm against sharing in improper ways.
Yeah, it's just
Improper and uncredited ways, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Well, there's a right way to do it with respect for each other. There's
right. It's a common courtesy. That is what it really breaks down to.
Yeah.
I posted on my weathering site the engine that I did for Joe Fugate.
Uh-huh.
Joe hadn't published it yet, so I only put up one picture. And wouldn't you know it, somebody took it off the page. Except they shared it. And thanks to Facebook, it tells me who went and shared what and where they shared it to. So I went and checked it out. And I said to the guy, I said, I don't mind you sharing it. I said, but please put it down until after January, because this was done. And I explained the whole story to him, and he says, oh yeah, no problem. So he went and took it down.
Yeah, see, that's my thing. The guy who had taken those screenshots was sitting there like, well, I can use them and argue. I was like, just take it down and share the video. It's not that hard to do. And it's a respect thing at that point, especially when the owner asks you to take it down, the person who owns the original content, and you say, well, I can use it. It's the owner. Just take it down and do it right.
Where the hell?
So you about finished that boxcar, Ken?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Been having some problems with the decals.
The decals.
First of all,
I wanted to get it on that one so bad. I was just waiting for the break.
I started to run out of ink when I started to print the custom decals, and worst of all is then I've got a new printer, and I had to remember how to orient the sheet, because what I've done, kind of cheating, sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it on, tape it off on a sheet, because this is only a 5x7 or a 5x8, yeah, and then print it off that way. And so and then what I do is I go and I seal it. So my logo, I had to try several test sheets. I always try to test it first before you print the final, and which is learned by hard lesson.
Yeah.
Try to not to waste anything. But yeah, I've got one more decal for the custom letter here, or excuse me, the logo. And what I'm doing is I'm using micro scale decals for the call letters and the call numbers. And you can see I've really worked these sheets over real well for my custom fictitious railroad name. So yeah, it's come along pretty quick, or pretty fast. And then it's a matter of dull coating it, and then start implementing some of Ralph's weathering. I'm gonna have to start watching some of his videos and really pay close attention. So this particular boxcar will probably be about 6 years old from the time period. The build date on this was 7/51. So I'm doing it the late 50s. So I'm going to have some light weathering, but yet I'm going to also have some rust coming off the roof. So, and this is a Intermountain PS1. I like PS1 box cars. And this has got the metal roof walks, and so I do like the detail on them. And it comes with the Katy couplers, and it doesn't come with sprung trucks, but they're equalized. So yeah, it's getting close as far as decals, but then it's the fun part's going to be is weathering it.
All right,
Are they
we
the
got a
plastic-
question.
Go for it.
We got a question here from Michael. Says, "Hey guys, building a 1,200 square foot HO layout, coal hauling. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Me too.
With helper engines, thinking of using the pink foam on top of plywood. Would it look okay to glue the flex track right on the foam?" Then he goes to say, "Or should I use a road bed on top of the foam?"
You could use straight on the foam. A lot of people do. Famously, Kid Patterson, his videos from Model Railroad Hobbyists go straight on the foam. But in my experience, the foam is a big sound conductor. It's like a resonance board, and it makes noise.
Usually
So-
when it's used by itself, it's louder.
Yeah, that's which mine is by itself and not on plywood, and it will mute it down when you glue it down properly to plywood, but it's still going to produce more sound than I was happy with. I use Homosote, but I understand the arguments against Homosote. It's a pain in the butt, but it just really, really works. If I wasn't using Homosote, I think I'd use Homoband, but cork or that stuff Ralph's using, that foam strip stuff.
I'm just trying to find the photograph of that. I have a photograph of it somewhere.
Yeah,
I would
especially
do the same thing,
track,
Andy.
that would be exceptional. But I would want something to do some sound banding. I mean, you can get the cosmetics just fine. You can shape the profile into the foam just as easy as anything with a Stanley Sureform rasp. And I use a wallpaper knife, but easy to get the shape and the contours and the cosmetics. But the sound problem is I just can't get past.
Yeah, I agree with everything Andy just said, and also it depends on your railroad. Also, it depends on your railroad. If it's a mainline railroad, it might be or a little bit better condition. It might be easier just to go with like a cork or something to put the ballast over it instead of trying to shape the styrofoam.
Well, even then, you can get a different layered cork. I know the local hobby shop here sells in-scale cork, and I've got the thick sheeting stuff of it that's a little bit thinner, and then you can actually get the taller cork for doing main lines that are going to be a little bit higher, or yard or siding tracks that'll be set a little lower. But I do this, like Andy said, I would do foam for all your scenery stuff and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I would lay cork or something on top of it because, like he said, that foam will just amplify anything you put on it.
Yeah, and also Professor had down here that given the prototype you're following, road bed is needed to give the Class 1 look.
Yeah, and like he said, is you can shape that foam to give it that elevated look, but I think, like he said, sound deafening, and then it's just easier to do ballast right up over that cork.
And I have some issues with cork because it dries out. It's fine. It's the only problem, and this won't affect most people, is when you go to change things, and I have always had to change things. That's why I designed my layout the way I did, so it's easy to change. I've always changed things, and cork is a mess to get up. It just breaks into 1,000 little pieces.
Yep.
That's why I like this stuff like Ralph's showing off here. I haven't used it, but I like the idea of this stuff Ralph's using.
This stuff that I'm showing in the red box is actually designed to wrap refrigeration piping, like your air conditioning pipes.
Yep.
It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit less. It's, according to that, it's 2 inches wide. So I made a little block of wood with a razor blade on it to cut it just the width of my ties.
And it's an eighth, whatever, give or take. Yeah.
It has a gum back, so you can lay it down, and it'll actually go around curves beautifully. It deadens the sound, and I use no more nails to put the flex track on top of that. And while it's setting, I just use some tacks in the little holes that come with the flex track.
Yep.
Put some spikes through just to hold it in place till you have it ballasted, and then take the spikes out.
Yeah, if you leave the nails in place very much, they will conduct the noise straight through the plywood.
Yep.
Now, on my foam and Homosote, I use T-pins on the outsides of the rails on each side to kind of hold it in place while any of my adhesives dry.
So going back to the cork thing, you can go into Home Depot or Lowe's or any building supply, and you can buy 4-foot wide rolls of cork. It's meant for cork board,
Doggone, 4 foot wide.
and you can cut it up to your heart's delight. You can get it in 1/8 inch, you can get it in 1/16 inch thick.
Yeah, and I've had really good luck with foam core. This it's 3/16 of an inch thick foam core. I've used it for some structures, for the back of some structures. It's just really handy to have around. I built my road bed with a kind of a ply method of foam core and
Hey.
core and homostope,
Andy,
and it has
Andy,
it's a ply,
Andy.
sir.
How about keeping an eye on things for me for a minute? I
Sure,
got to step out.
All right. So it's a ply of foam core. If I can get the light off from it. Yeah, it's a ply of foam core glued to the bottom of homosote. And then I use weather stripping like you'd use around a door or a window. I use weather stripping on the bottom. And part of the reason, and I put all my wires on the bottom of these track sections. The reason I go to all this is my track sections are semi-sectional big pieces of track. And I have foam core on them. But the weather stripping, because I have a little trough cut under my road bed for my wiring and eventually under-track speakers and servos and block occupancy detectors and all that jazz, that cavity under that styrofoam is a sound cavity. So it produced, like a speaker cavity, it produced a lot of sound. So I put that foam rubber on the bottom of it, and then I use a scenery material. Unlike plaster, I use scenery goop, which is a latex and it's springy or spongy, so everything has a lot of pivot and movement in it, and that works pretty good for sound.
Yeah. One thing though, from just not recommend doing is using any of that Bonkman has and different stuff. I think Katie has it that plastic roadbed stuff. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Just a noise. I have it on my layout though. If I ever built another layout, I will though. If I built the same layout, I would never go with the fast track like Lionel has. It's just so much of noise because it inside it's not hollow. It's like hollow. Like
Yep. Any of those hollow tracks, any of those that have the roadbed under them, I've had problems with every. I just have several problems with those. They're hard to make them look good anyway. But anything that has an open cavity, it's going to be resonant to some of the vibrations and sound. So a couple of things the prof's mentioning it, and Michael Alberto, let's talk about that 1,200 square foot railroad that has all of us drooling to have 1,200 square feet. I'm modeling a Appalachian Railroad with a helper district on multi-decks in a 225 square foot room. So what I wouldn't give for 1,200 square feet, I bought on the Norfolk and Western with Malleys. I'm all about the big Steve stuff. The prof mentions Appalachian Railroad Modeling website, Don Bork's website. That website is absolutely first class. One of my favorites, and one of the biggest things that I probably pushed me to go ahead and building is seeing some of the small track plans. And he has a few track plans for St. Paul, Virginia, which is what I'm modeling.
Yeah, that's if you're interested in coal hauling railroads, that would be before you even started building a layout. That would be the website I would recommend going to.
Yeah, I agree with the prof on a couple points. I got one to add to his. Is 1,200 square feet is a recipe for a long unfinished layout. That's why I like building in sections. So even though mine's only 225 square feet, I'm building one deck at a time, one 8-foot or less section at a time, and bringing them to some level of completion before I carry on. That's why these sections are down here low, is so I can work on them, and then I put them up at eye level. The prof asked me, the under-track speakers are not for locomotive sounds, prof. They're just for track noises. So I'm going to point the speakers up through baffles every 18 inches and small speakers and get the wheel squeal and brake noises under the tracks, because I know you can put that in the cars, but it's really difficult to hide that in an empty coal hopper, or in an empty hopper, or in a flat car or something. And which would be no problem with flat car because that'd be in a mixed merchandise freight. But I'm going to be hauling quite a few full full trays of empty hoppers back to the mines, the prep plants and such, and I needed a way to recreate that brake squeal sound as they come down the grade. All right, Prof. Yeah, I know, but I don't want everybody to be wearing earbuds or anything. I want the sound to feel like it's coming from the location. It sounds a funny thing. I like the, if I was doing in scale, I'd probably just put speakers under the layout or something and use more ambient sound. The problem is low frequencies work really good with subwoofers, like Broadway Limited's new system. It uses a subwoofer on the Paragon 3s. I get that for low frequency sound. They're not directional, but brake squeals and clacking noises as they hit joints and such, those are very directional sounds. It feels like those sounds need to come from close to the track work.
From the engine.
And I may never go put those speakers in, but I built the area under the track roadbed for them. But it's a multi-purpose area. All my wiring, all my servos, turnout machine, servos for turnout, point control, etc. It's all the same thing. Where did you? Oh, you hid the.
That's one of those Tsunami sound card decoders hidden in my what would be the actual kitchen area of my dining car.
Yeah.
They're slick.
Oh, I love them. I mean, that's what got me fascinated with this idea, and I'm still going to use them to produce sound under the track roadbed because you COD system essentially, and they have the same speed effect. Whereas if you tried to create it off from a some other soundboard, it would be very hard to replicate the clack noises being correlative to the speed of the train. So I'm going to use a sound card decoder and use mixers so that as it hits an occupancy detector, it moves the sound to that particular speaker. Right. And I'm protecting every 18 inches.
And like you said, it's hard. Like you said, empty cars are hard to hide them in, but even in scale, standard, 60-something foot box cars, they're hard to sneak in. I got lucky on this one, and I was just barely able to fit everything in that lower level. I clipped out the walls in between where the door is on the dining car there, and was barely able to sneak that one. But I tell you what, it makes a hell of a difference. I've got this one, which is mid-train, and then this one my baggage car goes up in the front of the consist, along with I've got that Amtrak Veterans unit that's got the ESU in it. And it makes a heck of a difference. And I know we've got 3 or 4 of them in our collection altogether.
Okay, and that's ESU that you got in there, right?
No, that's the Soundtrack sound card decoder.
They're the only people that make that, to my knowledge, that make a sound card decoder. Yes. Is Soundtrack.
You can build one out of ESU, out of the version 4, but when you compare buying a ESU version 4 at $110 to do that, where you can buy 3 of those in that 3-pack for the same price.
But then for that sort of thing, you can get an economy as well.
But the sound card decoders, the real benefit for those is they have some things built into them that are specifically designed for that function. Like the magnetic turn on, turn off consisting feature where you just swipe a magnet across to consist your cars. It's a really good design. I really like the Soundtrack sound card decoder. And if I done merchandise freights, if that's all my layout was, or passengers, or if whatever, I would have done it that way. But with empty trains of coal cars, and this is an Appalachian coal hauling railroad, 95% of the trains are just coal trains, empty or full.
Right.
And a lot of them empty. I just couldn't find a way to hide the sound cars.
Andy.
Sir.
Michael wants to know code 83 or code 70.
Mine's mostly 83, which is really close. It's about 1/1000th or 2/1000ths of an inch off from 136 pound per yard rail. My prototype, the Norfolk and Western on the Clinch Valley District, redid this line right after World War II, and they put 136 pound rail everywhere. And so, I mean, even in the yards, even on the sidings. So I do have a little bit of code 70 rail because my layout actually models 2 railroads, the Clinchfield and the N&W. There's a Y at each side of St. Paul, Virginia. They come together, and then they go through an interlocking where it has, they go through that interlocking where it has that interlocking tower. And so all that's code 83. There's a few places of code 70, like behind the trees here, there's a helper pocket, double-ended helper pocket for the Clinchfields Road to Dayton, Kentucky, or Dayton, Virginia. And that's code 70. There's a log track over, I don't know why they called it a log track, but that's what they called it. Railroad did. So at some point in its history, it was used for log cars, obviously. But over in St. Paul, that'll be 70. And the industrial tracks that were put in around 1900 or so, those will be code 70. I see that he was talking about, him and the prof were talking about how to join 83 and 70. And I've used that same trick the prof was talking about, taking a rail joiner, soldering it to 83, flattening it out. I don't have that problem because it's going to drive a lot of people crazy, and everybody's going to argue with me about this, but I don't use rail joiners. So I hand lay all my track. It's that section I showed you a second ago, hand laid track, hand laid all these little jig built tie templates that I use that have tie plates on them. So, I mean, I hand lay track that are wood track with individual tie plates and all the details. It's ever so slightly time consuming. And then, and I don't use rail joiners. At the rail joints, I put a piece of styrene between the rails, piece of for sale side. And then I use bolt plates. All of my track has, every 39 scale feet has a bolt plate and a little gash at the top of a little bolt plate and a little gash at the top of the rail. Every 39 feet, fill them, right there's another one. And they have bolt plates on the inside and outside of the rails. And at the rail joints, I don't spike a lot. This section has a fairly steep curve in it, so I did spike it. But I spike a little bit with some really small spikes, and then right around that rail joint, I'll epoxy that piece of styrene in the middle and get the alignment right, and then clip them, like Ralph was saying, instead of Hemos, and clamp it down while that all sets up, or as Andrew would say, goes off. But and then I put the bolt plates on the side with CA. That's been proven to be kind of the best thing to use for that. And that helps that alignment, even though they are resin impregnated paper bolt plates. I've got some metal ones, I've got some plastic ones, but these resin impregnated paper ones are just better detail. And once you soak a little CA into them, they harden up like, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, they're great. Then you throw some paint over top of them and the rail and everything. Take a track saw that I've had for 30 years and cut a little gash at the top and paint it, wipe the top off, the paint stays in that little gash. You can't see it good on camera. The camera doesn't do it justice, but in the real world, you can see every little section of 39-foot rail if you look. I mean, it looks good. And if I take a good photo with a high-def camera, a good high-quality camera, you can see it.
Professors put up here, Andy, but are they the registered name and all the details? And then in parentheses, Shade Suburban Radio advertising from yesteryear.
Registered name and all the details. I mean, I'm doing everything as right as close to NW spec that I got from the Norfolk Western Historic Society for track detail, including this area. I actually designed my track plan around the Norfolk and Western spec for this redesign in 46. I'm modeling 1950, so there may be some slight changes in that era and adjustments to some of the detail, but I've got pictures of 53 that I'm modeling off from a lot. I've got all the track alignment schematics from the engineers from 46, and I'm building to that spec as close as I can. There's no such thing. I wrote my recent eBag article. There's no such thing as a true prototype model. That's not possible. You can't get there. We don't have the space for it. Even if you had a gymnasium, you couldn't do it. Railroads are linear. And, my railroad's 90 miles stretched out. Eventually I'm going to model about 15 miles, but this is about 3 miles is all I'm modeling in 2 scale miles, a mile and a half scale miles. So I'm roughly compressing 50%. But the only thing I lost is there's a 4-track yard, and on the prototype it was 5. I mean, that's counting the main line. There's 4 tracks there, main line siding, 2 interchange tracks for the Clinchfield interchange. There was originally 3, and I didn't fit them. So otherwise, every siding that was there, I'm putting in. There's not that many. It was a helper district. Helpers hooked on at the next town down, which eventually I'm going to model, and they shoved up and up the around the peninsula as I make my way to the top deck, which will be above this deck. And it's above eye level, but I'm sloping all the scenery away from the track work. So, and there's a bunch of really high bridges up there. I mean, to scale, they would be 3 foot tall. I can't do that. I don't have the space. They're going to be 21 inches or so tall. But Appalachian modeling is just fascinating. I mean, I have a curiosity about Colorado narrow gauge and some of the New England railroads. And I mean, there's a lot of fascinating railroads out there. I mean, I even find some interest in some of the European railroads, but there's just something about Appalachian coal hauling railroads. It is man and machine against nature, and I'm just fascinated with that concept of operating that.
You know, I'm surprised when you said that you didn't use rail joiners. There wasn't a group that all broke out with their pitchforks yelling, "Get them!"
Yeah, I know. That's what I knew that was going to cause some trouble. I mean, and I've tried these track alignment jigs I have. They're a little flat piece of metal that looks like an H. Cut a little gash at each end of the rail, and you slide them over there. They lay down over the foot of the rail. You can't. They're really hard to see, but you can still see them. And anybody that's been on the Hangouts with me much knows that sometimes, occasionally, I'm a little picky. So
how do you get your
what's that, Ralph?
how do you get your rail to go around corners if you don't join it? And you have to put a joint on a corner.
Yeah, but I spike around the joints. I pre-bend. I've got a rail bender. I pre-bend all the rails. I cut the ends off because they don't bend correctly. Plus, it doesn't align to the scale 39 feet exactly at 36 inches. So I cut a little bit off to make it align correctly to 7 links at 39 foot. That also helps with the rail bending problem. And then I spike at the rail joints a little bit with I have some scale spikes. I mean, they are minuscule. They're really small, but and I glue everything down with contact cement, diluted with MEK. That works really well. It seems to hold the rails in. I've got some curves in place, and they haven't drifted gauge on me. But I do spike a little bit to hold tension on the rails. But I'm pretty particular about getting that curvature, so they will just lay. I set them, around these curves. These all bend in place, and then and I glue their ties down first. And then as I put the rails on, I'll lay them in the tie plates and make sure they perfectly lay in the tie plates without any tension.
Okay. I understand that.
And I heat the rail up as part of the laying process, which is going to expand the rail slightly. So that way everything shrinks back after the glue adheres, because I use a soldering iron to set the contact cement. I'll put the rail on there, put a couple T-pins in there like an X, and holding the rail up with the contact cement on it while it sets up. As I pull the pins and set the rail into the tie plates, I use a soldering iron and just move it along and set that contact cement, which is also heating the rail up, of course, and everything, so everything's expanding. So if anything, it'll shrink a little bit, give me a little bit of a gap at the rail joints. That's the theory. And I've only been doing this, I've been doing it this way I started laying track a year and a half ago or so. So I don't have a lot of it laid yet, but it seems to be, I've got 30 feet or something, and it seems to be pretty decent.
Michael also has down here, when it comes to weathering freight cars, have any of you checked out Dan's website?
Dan? I don't think so.
No.
I heard of this crazy Ralph guy that's supposed to be all right at weathering, but I don't know about it. So.
Hey, he's been sidetracked lately.
Yeah, but there's proof in the photographs too there.
And Volkswagens have sidetracked a lot of men over a lot of years, so.
It's true.
You're talking about what's on your workbench. Here's something you might find interesting. I've had this for years. I've had 2 of them.
I remember those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This probably is, I don't know, 50 plus years old, maybe. I don't know. I acquired them from somebody's out of somebody's collection. 25-cent uncoupling jig. You see that? Yeah, uncoupling ramp. That's it, uncoupling ramp.
I've tried every kind of contraption like that in the world, man. All these little H things you put on, I hate them. I mean, I like a pick. If you're going to use KDs, I like a pick.
I kept it just for conversation. I thought it was kind of unique, you know.
25 cents, that would be $8 today.
Yeah, probably.
Clay come out pretty good, Ralph. I haven't baked it off yet. I just kind of got it all scratched up. So I did take the saw like we talked about and scrape all the lines in it. Of course, I used to.
Right.
Now that diddle pick has been my favorite contraption for it. I've used that and an awl sub, but
yeah.
I started with the back of an X-Acto, which is what I've used for a lot of things. But I'm gonna bake that off probably tomorrow or something. I'm going to look at it again tomorrow, and I think it's a good idea to look at something over a day or two and just, you know, occasionally I look at something I did yesterday and think, well, there must have been something wrong with my eyesight yesterday, so I'm going to give it a day and then bake it. But I bought way too much of this doggone clay. I had no idea how far this stuff will go. I bought 2 boxes, a pound each of clay, about 2 pounds of clay, and I used about a 10th of one box on that tree, which I'd hated to have a 2-pound tree, but I'm amazed at how little it used for that tree, and I packed it on there. I mean, down here around the base, that's a 1/4 inch thick or so, and I put some pretty big gashes at the bottom of it. It's at least a 1/4 inch thick at the base.
You're going to need a lot more for around those roots, too.
I do, but I don't know that I don't know if the clay's going to work for that. You know, the clay's not, like we talked about, the clay's not flexible. So like all the ends up here, there's no way I can use clay on those. I needed clay where there's no foliage. So when you're looking into it, you see all this bark structure and texture. But then up here, where I'm going to put small material, I use like paintbrush bristles. So I'm going to put that latex on it, scrape it with a knife like you were talking about. Or with a saw, like you were talking about. I think that idea is going to work great. And then I'm going to spray it down with I'll use tacky glue and stick paintbrush bristles into it, pull them away to get me some armature up there, and then soak it down in leaves. I have not figured out what to do with the root structure yet.
Silicone.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to try it up top first.
Either that or you're still with your latex caulking because it'll remain flexible.
Yep.
You'll be able to bend it to the contour of your landscape wherever you're putting it.
Yeah, I think I might have chopped a couple of these off, or I'm probably bend 1 or 2 of them down if I can, and make a pin, because all of my trees have a nail in the bottom of them to stick them in the styrofoam. So I think I'll pull. And there's a lot. This has a lot of root structure, so I think I'm gonna cut a little bit of that off. I'm not sure yet.
Now that site that I showed you last night, he uses a wooden dowel.
Yeah.
And adds the wire armature to it.
Yep. That way you can get some bolts.
He's got a wooden center, and you don't use as much wires. You've probably got about 30 feet of wire there, maybe more.
Yeah. Now I got a lazier way to do this. I got Phil made the tree, so I wanted to do some experimentation with his technique of wire making. He was making some great trees, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of time making a bunch of trees to get one that looked great. So he made me the tree out of wire, and then I'm using my finishing techniques or some theories I had about it. And because he's using latex, I wanted to use something to get some structure to it. Then we're going to take pictures of his trees, pictures of my make of his trees. I'm also making him one of my sagebrush trees and sending it to him so he can use his finishing techniques on it, because he uses some different foliage than I do. He doesn't use leaf flake, he uses some other stuff. And then so we'll have, between 2 of us, we'll have 4 trees, and I want to get with other people in the community and get 10 or 12 different techniques for trees and build a collage for the e-mag out of all these different techniques for there's a lot of things. We've talked a lot about puffball trees and everything beyond them, but I don't like puffball trees. I don't at all like puffball trees. But I'm going to put a puffball tree.
They
What's
fill
that?
the void where you need it way in the background. They fill the void.
I've said that before. The problem with my opinion with puffball trees, if you build a layout at a relatively low level, at a deep layout, the way we used to build railroads, we built railroads at 36 or 40 inches or whatever tall. We built them 4 foot by 8 foot or whatever. If you done puffballs there, where you have this kind of a sensation of flying over the world anyway, puffballs work. But when you build these railroads at eye level that are 18 inches deep and you're looking up through the forest floor, then puffballs don't work. They fall down terribly for that. So you need an arbiter. You need a truck on those. If nothing else, you need sticks to the ground and stick the puffballs on top or something.
That's what I do.
Yeah, that works. And I'm not totally against puffballs in the background, but
yeah, one of my problems with puffballs is I've seen on things is they're pretty rounded. They don't look so. They're a little more round. For mine, I've used lichen instead of using that fiber. For me, what I see out there looks too rounded.
yeah,
It's
you can do
unnatural.
some things to mess with them. But my goal was to get a lot of people's trees and a lot of different alternatives to puffballs, and not write an article on it. Just a bunch of pictures. Say, here's puffballs and here's all kinds of other techniques. Use what you like. And I don't mean to come down too hard on puffballs. Regardless, it's your layout, whatever makes you happy. But my layout's at eye level. It has a lot of trees in front of the trains, and a lot of my trees are. I mean, this tree here is 13 inches tall without foliage on it. So I've got quite a few trees that are that are a foot tall.
How much experimenting do you do on? Obviously, only on the weekends because you're busy during the week.
Oh, well, I mean, I've built the trees I've built. I try to work a few evenings a week on it. I wish I could have. I just can't always come home tired. But I've built 7 different styles. Well, with this wire tree, this is my 8th style of or major construction technique for making trees. I've tried. I've got some sedum. It's okay for filler. I built some bottle brush. I built I built a bottle brush pine tree. I built a dozen or so. I built wood, asparagus fern, I think it is, maybe a Caspian fern or asparagus fern pine tree. I built wood of those because it took me like 12 hours. I took a bunch of sticks out of the yard and glued super tree to them. I built a bunch of super tree trees. And then my sagebrush trees, which so far are my favorite, but they represent a certain kind of tree. And I'm having a hard time getting, if you go out and actually look at the woods, you don't model off the model, but model off the prototype. And go out and look out the woods at the trees. I grew up in Appalachia, so I know what it's like to walk through the woods or camp in the woods. And that undergrowth and the forest floor, you've got to model that correctly. And I use ground up leaves for that. But the trees, you've got to have
realistic trees.
Well, I mean, they just look different. A single solo tree looks like a big ball, kind of, an elongated ball. But out in the forest, the foliage only gets where the sun shines. So you have these trees that have all this armature going up, but not much on it. And then at the top, you have this little flat cap of leaf. And that's really hard to get with sagebrush. They're great for modeling solo trees. But for groups of trees, they're a little difficult.
There is one more alternative to that.
I need another technique. Let's hear.
You can do what I'm doing. Model nothing but a yard, no trees.
Yeah. That's not. It's all about what you model, where the priorities are. I spend a lot of time on trees and track because those are the critical things to model an Appalachian railroad.
Right.
Yeah.
Model an urban railroad, then structures are critical.
I've actually seen some trees in a yard area in Cincinnati, Ohio.
The old Missouri Pacific shops in Kansas City, what is now Union Pacific's Neff Yard, the old shop is now a small forest. It's just the yard that I'm modeling has no trees in it.
That's the same thing with this one yard in Cincinnati. Bowling Green, I think it is. Outside Bowling Green. Outside, not in Bowling Green, though. Somewhere around Cincinnati.
Bowling Green. I live outside of Bowling Green. Bowling Green's about 4 or 5 hours from Cincy, but the Cincy yards are fascinating because they're shoved in between the river and the city. It's
Cincinnati, over it's the NS yard. See, it's like an intermodal yard. There's a roundhouse, like a turntable, and that's where the trees are.
there's plenty of yards where they just chopped everything down, though, or you can model like what Lee Buckler, however you pronounce his last name, modeling the desert. You know, he may have to model like 3 trees or something. But I need, I don't know, 5,000-6,000. But trees have been a big topic of discussion. So we've talked a lot. There's a lot of techniques about them. There's not a right technique or wrong. A lot of us are trying various ways to get better trees. And I think that's been a real weak spot in the hobby. I mean, there's some craftsman structures that look like a photograph if done correctly. I mean, if you do an FSM kit or a South River Model Works or one of those, heck, if you do a Bar Mills kit or something and do it upright, they look like a photograph when done correctly. You can do track work correctly. There's a lot of techniques that you can get really, really well done.
Andy.
But trees are tough. Yes, sir.
Andy, can you see this picture?
Yep.
Do you know which yard this is?
That's not Cincy. There's no mountains in the background. Cincy's two in the mountains.
Cincinnati's this way. Right this way.
Oh, that'd be out in Indiana then. So.
No.
Or out in Ohio, rather. So.
Yeah. This is what I'm talking about with the trees here.
Yeah, it'd be out in the outskirts. Those are big bushes, really. I mean, those are not as hard to model. It's these big 100-foot trees that are hard to model, but these 30, 40-foot bushes like that's not as hard.
Yeah, AJ says mall is Subway, no trees underground.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good alternative right there.
No, just roots coming down through the ceiling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Big Bill will be fascinated by that. I don't know that I've seen anybody really do that with any respect. I've seen the people modeling the L's, the elevated trainways, but I haven't seen.
Yeah. I really didn't do my subway scene really much detail. It was just for just a little scene for operators to run the passenger trains to another station.
But I like the understructure stations like on the Franklin South Manchester. That station back, kind of a tunnel under a structure. And those big passenger depots like Cincinnati had, and some of those that have those big platforms over the tracks. Those are fascinating. But they didn't do that in the backwoods of Appalachia, man. If it didn't haul coal, there was not a lot of investment in it.
Just looking to get a feel here. Who else coming to Kansas City in 2018?
I am. Yeah, it's not that far for me, so I'm coming for sure.
Why would we want to go there?
NMRA Nationals here in 2018.
Yeah.
That, and I'm here. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I don't get ready to say that, but
that's mean.
What's your point?
Yeah.
My point: the best way to experience anything is with a local. I'll tell you that right now.
Man, Kansas City's a hotbed, brother. I want to come out for a week or so and try to get in on some of the OpSig sessions and some of that stuff out there. I'm going down to Orlando. I'm gonna go to Orlando this year as well, but next year I won't miss Kansas City.
So I'm slowly working since the NSE. I've started working on a handful of N-scale layouts. I don't know if you saw. I had posted. We were playing around 2 work sessions back and ended up running a coal train, and I filmed it and posted it. But that layout I work on just about every week. Then there's a couple other layouts that are in scale that I've been working on. And then there's a couple of HO ones that I'm getting ready to work on, but I'm starting to meet all the people that for a long time have been kind of urban legend, because Kansas City, there's a ton of operation layouts in Kansas City. I think they're at least 40 plus.
Yeah, I mean, really good operating layouts. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but for the longest time, being a young guy, there's really no easy way in. But through
That's
that,
what I found to with my with the group modelers around this area. Third.
yeah, it's just one of those things. But since the NSE and proving myself to be useful in work sessions, I'm starting to meet these guys. I mean, guys that have had their layouts featured. I was reading or rereading the article. The Buffalo and Pittsburgh was done in the in-scale railroading. It was the March-April edition. That's the one I work on just about every week. And then John Atchison's Santa Fe 1st and 2nd Division, which I believe was May, June of 2016's in-scale railroading.
Yeah.
I work on his layout from time to time. And then here pretty soon, I'll make my way out to Steve Priest.
Yeah, I really want to see his.
He does work sessions every so often, I think about every week. And one of the guys that I work with on the Buffalo and Pittsburgh works on Steve Priest's layout on Tuesday. So at some point, I'm going to go out there and at least introduce myself, if anything. But I'd love to work, just to work on this layout would be phenomenal. And then Brett Ovenhauser, which is another layout I need to see. Joe Casper, Burlington Northern layout.
Yeah, that's a nice one too.
I got to operate on that one during the NSE, and that layout's just phenomenal.
The one thing I would really like to see more of the videos of that Pittsburgh and Buffalo layout.
Yeah, the biggest thing about that is most of the time when we're working over there on work sessions, we usually end up, like I say, working. We just happen to be running a train, and I happen to have the camera out on that night. And then when we're doing operation sessions, they're kind of focused. I shoot all my stuff off of a tripod, just because the one thing that irks me is shaky video. I hate watching handheld model train video where it's shaky. It just I can't do it. So the biggest thing is between trying to operate and control my camera and move the tripod and whatnot. And that's why you never really see a whole lot of not very many people post straight operations videos from op sessions. They may post little clips and whatnot, but I'm hoping to try and get more. I want to try and get more up from that layout, and then John Atchison's. I actually have a cab ride video from both of those layouts that I need to get up at some point. I've just been very slow about editing videos lately.
Those are both fascinating. Steve Priest's layout. Miles did a tour of that layout. That's just, I mean, even what he's got done already is just some kind of layout. I mean, just in sheer size and volume. But execution of it, it's and it's in a real scale. It's not none of that in scale crap.
You're right. It is horribly oversized.
Yeah, it's horribly oversized. I'm just messing with you.
That Pittsburgh and Buffalo layout. What kind of paperwork is he running off of? Operating sessions.
The 1985 standardized switch list for the BMP. Hang on. I think I still have one of mine from the last session. Everything is handwritten switch lists.
Whew.
I do still have mine.
Some time to restage.
That's what his looks like.
Nice.
All of his stuff is handwritten. This was actually, this was Johnsonburg too. So this was my sheet from the NSE week. I got to operate his layout during the NSE week. But I've been in another session. I guess I didn't take the paperwork with me, but I got to operate the Butler yard, which is the main yard on the Buffalo and Pittsburgh. And,
what does he use for dispatching?
The Buffalo and Pittsburgh really isn't a big line. They had one dispatcher and everything was track warrant.
Yeah.
He just bypasses it by doing verbal track warrant, and then he runs 5 two-man crews. One crew runs the branch from Butler all the way up to Karn City, and I can't remember the point beyond that, but they run that entire branch. One crew runs the Buffalo yard, Buffalo, New York yard. One runs the Butler yard. The Butler crew is also in charge of trains between Newcastle and Butler, just because it's such a short run. And then there's 2 more crews at Johnsonburg and Dubois, in between the lines.
Does he model? Actually, you call Newcastle, though. It's actually West Pittsburgh, actually, where it comes in, though. It's called Pittsburgh, though. West Pittsburgh Tower, I think it's called on the railroad, though. Does he model the CSX connection, or is it by staging?
It's technically the Newcastle yard is CSX. It's the CSX yard. The BMP has drop-off tracks in that yard.
Yep, I know. I've been on the prototype there. I've seen full hand, and it's between Mahoningtown, I think it's called, and pretty much Newcastle. It's suburb Mahoning, and then there's like it's like West Pittsburgh, I think they call it, the town, though it's on the railroads at the PNLE station. Right there, about there, is where it comes into what it's called Newcastle Junction, and pretty much that's Newcastle Yard. And there's also another short line interchanges there.
So
that was good video, though. It was really interesting. It seemed to be a very well running in-scale layout.
yeah, it's crazy because he's actually one of the few layouts in Kansas City that still runs analog, and his railroad just runs bulletproof.
Really? Still DC?
He runs the common rail, where one rail's wired to one bus constantly, and then the other rail is run through a 5-channel, technically a 6-channel selector switch. And he's got 5 boosters, and he runs 6 buses, one for the common rail, and then the 5 boosters. And then each one's got 1 through 5 selector, and then a complete off. And he runs. He's got the whole layout divided up into blocks. And that's how you call into your dispatch, and you get authorization into the different blocks. So, one's Brad block, one is, stuff like that. And then you go over to that block selector switch, throw it to whatever your booster is or your controller is, and then you move on with your work.
Oh, are they mounted to the layout fascia, or are they mounted as a like control panel for dispatcher, or what?
What do you mean? The selector switches?
Yeah.
They're mounted to the fascia about center of the block.
Okay. That's where you select which cab you're operating.
Yes. What a crew will do is they'll call into the dispatch, ask for the certain blocks. Dispatch either accepts or denies that request, and then the crew will go over and set all the blocks that they then have authorization to occupy.
Kind of like manual blocking, pretty much, DTC. Well, that's how we used to do it, man. We had a DOS layout back years ago. I mean, it was 20 by 80 feet, could run 10 trains, had cab selector switches for 10 cabs. But the dispatcher controlled all the power to the layout. You just ran trains. Dispatcher went through and flipped the authorization clear for your cab, and then you had signals based on occupancy, and it was enjoyable to operate and operate very realistically. It was DC. The problem with DC generally is more of a problem on small layouts than it is large layouts. If you've got plenty of room to open and run, it's not too hard. We even had a helper, but you had to pull up and turn the rotary switch toward the helper, and it cut the power to the siding where the train was setting, and then you would use your throttle to pull the helper up forward. Then you'd flip the switch back and forward, and all of the buses, helper and lead locomotive, would be under the same cab. So right. They had to roughly run at the same speed to make that work, but you could do it. That was back in the DC days.
Right. And so his layout's real slick. If you do end up making it to Kansas City, I'll have to try and get a tour together for a bunch of guys. But his layout's so slick because it's essentially 5 just switching locals, and there's 2 through trains technically in each session. But the way he's got it all divided up and it runs, it's so silk smooth. I think the biggest problem we had out of the last session, which was about 3 weeks back, the only problem we had was a switch was stuck.
You're going
That's
to
right.
have that. So does the prototype. My biggest argument in favor of DCC is not control, even though that's a big benefit, especially for small layouts. But my biggest argument for DCC is sound.
That's my thing too, especially because it kills me when I go over there and I go to film something or run something. Because I can take something over to John Atchison's and he runs Easy DCC, which isn't my preferred system, but at least it's still DCC.
It's not bad.
And I can run. It's not a bad system. Both the Feather River layout and John Atchison's Santa Fe layout both use it. And it's not a bad system. It's just not my preferred.
Yeah, a lot of people who've had DCC a while, like Joe Fugits is CVPs, Easy DCC. A lot of people that have had DCC for a while are using that product.
Yeah.
Is there though if you don't do a video though, do you at least post some pictures of the layout, maybe even the aisleways?
Yeah, he did a great video on that.
I know, though I'm more like showing like the that switch list, the picture of that, like the selector switches in the aisles and how wide the aisles are.
I tell you what, I need to talk to JD. I kind of stepped away from the EMAG due to some stuff out of my control, but I need to get back into writing for the EMAG. If I can talk him into it, I may end up starting to do articles on the local layouts here leading up to the NMRA in 2018.
You need to do that, man. I miss your articles of the EMAG and stuff. And I enjoy writing for the EMAG, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do. So
now that's my thing is I really enjoyed it. There's just like I said, there were things beyond my control that came up, and
I understand busy well.
So, but yeah, I now that things are starting, especially as we get closer to the quote modeling season, things are starting to slow down. So I need to get a hold of him, and maybe that's what I make my coming back article is the BMP, and then write about the Santa Fe and whatnot, and go from there. And then that way, when everybody comes, or at least the guys that are here in this group, when they come in 2018, they'll have a general idea of the layouts and whatnot because they've already read about them. And these, like I said, in-scale railroading, March, April, and then May and June both did the John Percy's BMP and John Atchison's Santa Fe layout, but I can still write about them either way. Especially because the nice thing about being able to write for the EMAG is I can select what I write about. And like he was asking for the aisles and whatnot and the selector switches, they didn't really talk about it in the in-scale version. They just kind of, talked about the layout, the general idea, and moved on. So to be able to go a little bit more in-depth and provide that.
I also would like to see the pictures of the paperwork and stuff and all that.
We have a session. Let me look at the calendar here. Today's the 20th. We have a session in about a month from now. I'll collect what paperwork I can. It's on the 23rd, so I'll collect what paperwork I can, and I'll try and get what am I thinking of? An album posted of at least. I'll try and get a couple of the locals paperwork and some of the other stuff, and try and get it up here.
I'm always interested in what other people are, how they're running their sessions, how they're doing it, and the paperwork. There's hundreds of ways of doing everything.
Oh yeah, I even here in Kansas City, I know Joe Casper's Burlington Northern layout, which is a phenomenal layout, huge layout, and wonderfully put together. All of his stuff is car cards. I know John Atchison's is car cards, and then like I said, John Percy is all handwritten switch list. The guy who runs or owns the Feather River layout that I work on up north of me wants to do handwritten switch list and whatnot, but with how big his layout, I don't think he's going to be able to do it. But like they said, there's hundreds of thousands of ways of doing it. Especially with the new electronic age, I know a lot of people are starting to use routing systems and whatnot, and with people starting to implement tablets and whatnot. I know Peter Borshirt's of the UK just recently got done putting tablets in for all of his switches, so he can control everything mobile.
That's how we'll do mine. I'm using iPods for all the operators, so they'll have a cab that'll throw turnouts they can control. Most of them are CTC control, but the turnouts that would be manual that are unlocked by the CTC, you control by your throttle. And then I'm putting switch lists and fast clocks and all that stuff all on the iPods. They're easier to handle one-handed, and I bought a shoulder mount and arm strap for an iPod, so I'm trying to experiment with using that on your wrist so you keep your hands free.
Right. What? Okay, so I've never really been in complete understanding of the fast clock. Will somebody explain to me what the purpose to it is?
The fast clock, what it is it's pretty much just make it time slow, speed up, pretty much, to make the distance, like, make a operating session. If you're running a session, make it a whole day instead of.
Right. I know it runs faster than normal time. So what would normally be 3 hours is 8 hours on the fast clock.
Yeah,
But
it's like.
is there any real purpose that it serves? Because one of the things we were talking about the other night at John Atchison's was, and I'm kind of opening this up for debate here, so chime in where you have it. But one of the things we were talking about is your yard switchers don't exactly run in 1 to 4 or run day. Yard switchers are running 1 to 1 because you really can't speed up yard switching in any, or classification switching in any way, shape, or form. So we were talking about, and just like I said, feedback welcome here, but is there really any purpose for that fast clock, or would it be easier just to write everything out in real time?
So it's a tough balance. It's a tough floating balance between the two. The reality is yard switching and industrial switching is still a 1-to-1 operation. It roughly takes the same amount of time to pick or drop a car or to set a set of arrival departures into a classification yard. However, when you're running a mainline freight, I'm modeling basically 4 to 5 scale miles of what should be 15 or 16 miles. It should take you 30, 45 minutes to run this part of the run, but in the on my layout, it's going to take 15 or whatever. So you have to balance the two. I am a believer in fast clock, but if you wanted to run true compression, you'd run a 6 to 1 or 4 to 1 or something on my layout. But because of the need for industrial switching, I think you have to kind of split the difference and do more like 2 or 3, like 3 to 1 is kind of a sweet spot, I think, to where the road crews feel like they're covering more distance because they're covering more time. And that's especially true if you use the day-to-night lighting effects and some of those things. So
Right.
you get the sense that you're starting in the morning and progressing into the evening, and that you're actually getting work done over a period of time. But it is a balance, and you've got to kind of float the difference.
And it also depends on the layout too. And it depends on how the railroad runs and how it operates. With my railroad, I decided it really doesn't need a fast clock. It can run on a sequence schedule, and we really do everything in real time.
And I'm going to use a fast clock on mine because I have a passenger run that has to meet certain time requirements. And there's still a timetable and train order. Even though there's CTC on this slide, a lot of people have this impression that there is either ABS or CTC or track warrants or TT and TO, but railroads intermix those. And I wanted to say that a minute ago when you were talking about all the various sorts of paperwork. At one point, in the 30s, 40s, whatever, 20s, 30s, 40s heydays of railroading, there was like 180 or 200 Class 1 mainline railroads in this country and hundreds of other short lines, and they all did it differently. So there's no exact answer for how to do any of this stuff unless you're modeling a prototype. And I'm modeling it the way N&W did it. And
right.
Common way nowadays would be probably is just to run most of the maintenance jobs, track warrant, and then freights, depending on the railroad. Like NS would be probably track warrants for the freight train, and then signal if it was like CTC, like PTC or some CTC, it'd be running with partly track warrant and partly not track warrant.
Well, that's very era specific though. Track warrants didn't come around until at least the late 70s, and they weren't mainstream until the 80s or 90s. Track warrants become popular, but in 1950, TT and TO was still the #1 used system in the world, or in the U.S. in 1950, with CTC quickly taking over. But in 1950, this line was both. It has CTC signals, but they still had trade order boards and track. Anyway, the paperwork's kind of fascinating, but I see for my railroad, a fast clock is an important component of the operations. But I don't have a yard. All my yards are in staging. This is through an interchange. There's an interchange yard. There's interchange tracks. There's some sidings. There's tipples. And there's a a branch line with a prep plate, yard where we switch empties for loads, mine run coal for processed coal. But so those are 1-to-1 operations. So I can't run a fast clock of like 5 or 6 to 1 like I'd like to.
Right.
All right, AJ's got down here. Fast clock usage goes back to the days before hidden staging yards, and so yards were just for holding trains. Think of layouts like the G&D or the Delta lines. Timothy said even if your switching crews are running 1-to-1, they can kind of have time between your mainline units and or bringing in the train.
We don't run trains slow enough anyway. I mean, we switch cars too fast. The real railroad has to stop, hook a car up, lace air hoses, wait for air to build up, all these other things.
Right.
I was agreeing that it's 1-to-1, but it's not really, because you could go pick a car in 30 or 45 seconds, whereas on the prototype, that would take 5 minutes to pick a car and lace the air hoses. So there's still, you could still use a fast clock and it not impede your operation, as long as you don't get too crazy about it. If you turn it into a racetrack, you're going to run into a problem. So you need a fast clock. I think you need a fast clock for realistic operation. But if your real railroad cared about what time of day it was operating, that's the thing. If your prototype or the kind of railroad you're operating cared about time, then a fast clock is a great idea. But don't get too crazy with it, man. You're going to drive people insane.
Yeah, the best way I would do with it would be to run all your freight trains extras and probably run the passenger trains on time to get on your fast clock. Or
that's how all mine run anyway. There is an express freight or a merchandise freight that does have a time schedule on it, but all the coal trains basically ran as extras. Mine runs run as extras. There are a few time requirements for when mine runs need to drop empty, but they're kind of loose, and they're train order driven. But at this point, since CTC has been installed since the late 40s, it's installed in 46, 47, 48. By 1950, most of the trains honor the CTC. All the trains honor the CTC. The train orders are predominantly for passenger and express freight. Coal trains don't care a lot about train orders unless the passenger or express freight gets out of sequence.
Right.
But I think it adds the challenge. CTC's great, but what you're basically doing is driving through rush hour traffic. You're just looking for lights to change and pushing a train forward, pushing a button when a light tells you to. Train orders and timetables make you think. But if you do all TT and TO and the layout's not big enough, and especially if the layout is kind of a busy layout with a lot of trains running, like the morning mine runs on my layout would be fairly busy with a lot of trains going out, TT and TO gets really crazy, really hairy, leaves a lot of room for mistakes, and those will stress people out and make it a lot less fun. So making CTC drive that burst of traffic and TT and TO to add some additional challenge just seemed like part of the reason I chose this line was because of that balance between those two.
Yeah, there was just an article, Lance Minheim just on his blog just was talking about that.
And if all you want to do is model, if you got a 4-hour session and you want to model 4 hours of the real world, use the clock on the wall and on your wrist. That's fine. But my goal is that in 4 hours, I can model 12 hours. I can model, dawn to dusk or whatever. That's my hope, is that I can pull. These guys, nowadays, railroaders are kind of spoiled. 8, 10, 12-hour shifts, back in 1950. These guys worked for a doggone living, man. They were out 16, 18, 20 hours. And I want to replicate that. I don't expect them to get dirty and covered in soot and all that, but I still want to replicate that sense of, putting a hard day's work in.
Yeah. So, one thing is, you remember, it's also, it's also a model train layout. You don't want to overpressure your operators, too.
No, you could easily go too far. If you're making people fill out all these bill of ladings and all this other jazz, you could easily go too far. However, I think people who really care about prototype operation, and I'm one of those people that I think most layouts fall a little short in giving the sense that you did a day's work. You grab a throttle, you push forward, You follow the green lights till you get to the other side. You stop your train, you BS and get a fresh cup of coffee, and you take another train and you follow the lights to the other side. That, and again, I've said this about car cards and waybills. I'm not anti car cards and waybills at all. I'm not at all. I think they're fine. But if you operate a layout occasionally, they're fine. If you operate your railroad often, like I was a member of a club for years, and I operated that railroad over and over and over and over again, it gets repetitive with car carts and waybills, and a certain types of operations get kind of monotonous and kind of brain dead. So you want I think you want a bit of challenge.
Yeah, you do. One of my systems on my railroad here, I got a system set up. It tells me how many cars to send outbound. I don't send out so many, even though I have like the Tony Custer's like car cards and waybills, so they look like the prototype waybills. I also have situations where there's like bad storm and trees are down. Run a spotter ahead of the train to clear up trees and different stuff. I got all that kind of stuff, hot boxes and all that.
Yeah, I'm gonna do weather conditions. I've talked at length on here about doing the fog effect, and there was fog orders handed down for certain sight distances. And when the fog comes in and you have a sight distance of a few hundred feet, the speed restriction goes down to 10 miles an hour. And I want to replicate that. Those challenges make it different from op session to op session, and make it unique.
Yeah, there.
Andy?
If you wanted to look at a layout that was not so, I'm not going to say giant though. It's not as small as Travis Marshall's at making cars random and more prototypical as that Valley line.
Yeah.
And has that spreadsheet from Mara Hobbyist.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to do it. It's a simple way to do it. It works.
All right, tell you what, we're going to
Yeah.
get one more in here. Who was that hollering for Andy just now?
That was me. You were talking about the doing car cards or switch order, and I was going to put our input in as far as when I say our modular group has tried to do car card and switch list, and a lot of our guys want to opt out just because we're allowed to do that in our group, because a lot of the guys push paper around all day anyway, so they kind of like that casual operation. If they want to prototypically operate, they will, but most of the time these guys I work all day and I push a pencil and paper, and we just want to do some casual operations. So I mean, that's all depends on the modeler.
And a lot of railroads do multiple op sessions to kind of fill those niches with different peoples.
Right.
And you can do that from time to time. Have these so-called fun runs where you get together and run trains. But if you've designed a railroad for operation and it has sidings, spots, and interchange and coal tipples that need mine runs, you have to have some kind of paperwork to fulfill it. Now, if you
I understand from your standpoint, and when you're not a public display, yes, that's exactly right. With our group, the only time we can actually do that are during op sessions where we've got either a low number of general public viewing it, or it's just for the group only.
Yeah.
But when we're at a train show, that's not an option, and most modular groups really can't always do that. And when I say that is usually a lot of your modular groups just have like a 2-track main line, or unless you're Fremo that has multiple tracks. But yeah.
My favorite module layout I've seen is the Operation Roadshow.
Well, there's a lot of different kinds. That's more Fremo, but not exactly. It's specific. But the last statement I'll say about operation, because I tend to come down hard on car cards for repeatability, but they're okay. There's ways to fix them and make them less repeatable. But my last statement about the thing is there's not a right answer.
That's right.
Fast clocks fit some people, car cards and waybills, some switch lists. There's a lot of choices out there. I would say that going too far in any one direction is not good. If all you do is run trains in circles, that's boring. But if you make people fill out accident reports as if they were at work, that's not going to work either. So
How
somewhere,
do you know I used to do that on my layout when I first started operating?
yeah, that's a little much. Somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle. Now I
Yeah.
tend to go on this side of the middle, but somewhere in the middle.
I had prototype accident reports. I used to have my operators always fill out every time they had a derailment.
Alrighty, we done hit the bewitching hour here.
Yeah, we're actually a little bit over.
Get it?
He's our timekeeper.
Yeah, he is. He's my timekeeper. He lets me know if I'm late starting and if I run over.
Yeah, though I like to talk about operations. I'm not gonna have any not stop that.
But anyway, I want to say thank you to all the people in the chat over here. Professor, AJ, Timothy. Saw David over a little earlier. Michael, glad to see you got back in here too. Appreciate that. And Phil, he was here. Bruce came in. Let's see who else we got here. Get on up the list. That were in here a little earlier. Tony made it in. Tony, yeah, okay. Yeah, pretty good number of people here. Did have a little snafu here. I guess when I updated the software, I had no idea it changed my streaming settings, so I'll have to go back and reset those so that you'll get the full screen. We're getting better. I have less glitches going with each show, but we're getting there. Well, thank everybody on the panel. Shane, Ralph, Newcastle, Ken, Andy. Troy popped in a little while. Dude was here. And one fella that used to be a regular here at DNS, David, saw he was out on the road, giving us a little screenshot there coming down the road. Let me get over here and all right, I want to say keep checking in on the YouTubeMallBuilders.com website for all the latest news. Excuse me. And info on the Tuesday live presentations now. The EMAG and the live show schedules. The live show is once every month, and that is the third Saturday of the month. We've already had one this month, so October the 15th will be the next live show. That'll be Barry IT and then Big Bill the host. The EMAG is bi-monthly. Comes out every other month. You want to go to the website, click on the EMAG icon there at the top, and you'll get a selection where you sign up for email notifications. So when the EMAG comes out, you'll be notified of it, so you won't be waiting on it. And that is a PDF. You can download it on all different kinds of devices. So doesn't matter where you at, you got the EMAG there to read. Kill a little time. JD and his crew do a good job on that EMAG. And they do work hard. I do mean hard too. The Tuesday presentations, live presentations, are twice a month. You can check the schedule there and see what who's got the next show and all. And of course, Thursday hangouts are every week. I don't know if I'm going to give this up or not. I kind of like it. But anyway, go to the website, sign up for the EMAG emails so you don't miss out when it comes out. Check all your schedules. All our shows, the Tuesday live presentations, the live show, and the Thursday night hangouts are 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock Eastern. Check your time zone. so you don't miss out. If you do, the shows are recorded on our YouTube channel, YouTube Mall Builders, and they are about once a month. I go in there, clean them up, put them all in their playlists, make it a lot easier if you're trying to find a particular show. Just go to the playlist you're looking for and find your show there. I want to thank everybody for participating in tonight's Hangouts. And we will catch y'all next week. So, have a good weekend. And with that said, we'll say good night and have a good week.
Good night.
Not all.